mantras and a great invocation. A lot of material to get through today. It's one of the most important subjects in esotericism, I think, as you'll see, and as probably some of you are already aware anyway. So anyway, mantras can awaken the highest potential and give soul contact. They are a spoken form of concentrated thought that is verbalized and visualized and is a very powerful tool. Best mantras are those aimed at humanity's well-being. For example, the mantra of unification, the great invocation, and it awakens one to what is needed to become compassionate. Personal mantras are useless if one doesn't know intonation, meaning, purpose, and visualization. That's why I emphasize in the meditation when you are sounding the Om silently, which is more powerful than the verbal Om, than the outer Om, if you like, to do so with intent and visualization at the same time from the mental plane. True mantric sound emanates from the stillness of the heart, we're told. It is the result of successful meditation practice, not the cause of, and relates to soul contact, soul note, vibration, the so-called voice of the silence, which is the title of a book by Blavatsky, which is some of you I know have read. When sounding the AUM, the OM or the OM, 99% of people draw upon the solar plexus. Spiritual desire does produce results. Exhilarated feelings reflect the heightened emotions and psychic experiences. But the heart is not awakened this way or by focusing on the chakras, as most of us know. Only by group endeavor focused on compassionate undertakings and decentralized from our personal I does the awakening take place. I'm just going to skip to another quote that I want to bring to your attention. It's a fairly long one from Externalization of the Hierarchy, but it relates directly to what I was just saying. There are several such mantric formulas and words of power in use by such students, but they fail to accomplish very much because the person using them has no real understanding of their import and purpose and is usually so focused in his or her emotional body, aspirational astral nature, that all that he says and does in connection with such words of power is entirely innocuous and futile. Words of power, ancient mantras such as the Lord's Prayer, the Great Invocation, are only effective if used upon the mental plane and with the power of a controlled mind, focused on their intent and meaning behind the spoken effort. They then become potent. When said with the power of the soul as well as with the directed attention of the mind, they automatically become dynamically effective. Students all over the world have for years used the sacred word, have sounded the OM or the OM with great diligence. I would like here to ask why, with what results? I myself will reply, with practically no results except a slight stimulation of the aspiration and a small awakening of the creative imagination. This means that the results achieved have had effect only within the aura of the person concerned and have not penetrated into his environment or produced any recognizable effects. The Om is potent and dynamically effective when rightly used and will produce changes, destroy that which must be eliminated or ended, very important phrase that one, and will build in by attraction and consolidation that which is desired into the fabric of the group life, producing incidentally, though nonetheless certainly, needed changes and the wise reconstruction of the individual life. Ponder upon this, as the Tibetans fond of saying often. So, a lot to absorb there, but I think you get the point. So the power and the effect of a mantra depends on the spiritual attitude, the knowledge and responsiveness of the individual. The sabda, or sound of the mantra, is not a physical sound, though it may be accompanied by such a one, but a spiritual one. It cannot be heard by the ears, but only by the heart, and it cannot be offered by the mouth, but only by the mind. So mantras do not act on account of their own magic nature, but only through the mind that experiences them. They do not possess any power of their own. They are only the means of concentrating already existing forces, just as a magnifying glass, though it does not contain any heat of its own, is able to concentrate the rays of the sun and to transform their mild warmth into incandescent heat. In fact, to burn that which is in front of it. This is also akin to the concentration phase of meditation, one of the first steps of meditation, where we concentrate the mind and try and go beyond the monkey mind, the chattering mind. And of course, we can use the Om at that particular point by sounding the Om from the head center, from the mental, which kind of connotes the mental plane, and visualizing where it's going and seeing it transcend the chattering lower mind. Of course, here's the great invocation on the left here. Invocation and evocation, which, by the way, will be the major science, we are told, of the Aquarian cycle coming. Invocation is calling upon of aid or guidance, protection from deity, God within, the higher self. Invocation is a mantra prayer that is sent on the wings of aspiration and inspiration, using the imagination, looking for a corresponding response. This corresponding response is called evocation, the appearance about which is invoked. So this invocation, evocation science, or words, are symbols of humanity's reaching out for life, striving forward in evolution. It is a symbol of using all within our power to transcend the limitations. And this has happened in certain times in history as well, where humanity's unconscious cry for light has actually brought a response. In fact, the masters of wisdom, who in the last century or so have brought through great wisdom to humanity through Blavatsky's teachings, through Bailey's teachings, through Helen O'Rourke's teachings and so forth, have done so because they have to follow the law of evocation, having been invoked en masse by humanity for the last several centuries. The Great Invocation, as we know, brings powerful positive change on a planetary scale. The GI, as we call it, is to the New World religion what the Lord's Prayer was to Christianity. But the difference between the two is that the Lord's Prayer is related to prayer, whereas even though the Great Invocation is a prayer of sorts, it's more of an occult formula. To the general public, it is a prayer to God, hope for light, love and peace, also enlightenment of political leaders. To the spiritually minded, it will convey recognition of the world of causes and of spiritual hierarchy. It will strengthen those with true vision and broadcast the fact of the masters of wisdom, those who stand subjectively behind world affairs. We do mention the masters, of course, during the invocation. Great Invocation is a potent solar instrument designed to bring about changes and readjustments. This is a very interesting factor because the Earth as a whole is coming into alignment far more deeply with the solar logos as it becomes, as it treads the path of discipleship, you could say, of becoming a sacred planet. From the book ROTC, which is Reappearance of the Christ, the science of invocation and evocation will take the place of what we now call prayer and worship. Be not disturbed by the use of the word science, the Tibetan tells us. It is not the cold and heartless intellectual thing so often depicted in exoteric science thought. It is in reality the intelligent organization of spiritual energy and of the forces of love. And these, when effective, will evoke the response of spiritual beings who can again walk openly among men and thus establish a close relation and a constant communication between humanity and the spiritual eye. So the heart and mind working together here, using the mind in a scientific sense, and yet connecting with the heart and broadcasting the energies of the heart. Of course, the heart and mind are the inextricably entwined components of human evolution. Another long quote here worth relating to from White Magic, a treatise on White Magic, TWM. May I add that the sound is only truly potent when the disciples learnt to subordinate the lesser sounds. Think about that. All the lesser sounds in our everyday life, from within and from without. Only as the sounds he sends forth normally into the three worlds are reduced in volume and in activity, as well as in quantity, will it be possible for the sound to be heard and so to accomplish its purpose. Only as the multitude of spoken words is reduced and silence in speech is cultivated, will it be possible for the word to make its power felt on the physical plane. Only when the many voices of the lower nature and of our environment are silenced will a voice that speaketh in the stillness make its presence felt. Only when the sound of many waters dies away in the adjustment of the emotions will the clear note of the God of the waters be heard. It's a very profound statement, that one. Water, of course, being a symbol of the astral body, the emotional body. And there is a Deva or Raja Lord of the astral plane that has a particular note for each of the subplanes, in fact, as we discussed in another class. People seldom realize the potency of a word, yet is stated. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Without him was not anything made that was made. And I discussed this in my book, Unveiling Genesis, Mysteries of the Root Races and Cycles, where I interpret esoterically the first 6 chapters of Genesis, of which this phrase is from one of the first verses. When therefore we read those words, our minds go back to the dawn of the creative process when through the medium of sound, God spoke and the worlds were made. We have another passage later on which talks about this. Nada Brahma, you can see this picture here. This is the cover of a book called Nada Brahma, The World of Sound. And Nada Brahma is the divine sound, I think it means in Sanskrit. Music and the landscape of consciousness. There are many interesting books like this about sound, and there will be increasingly so because it's going to be one of the great sciences of the Aquarian age. It has been said that the chief agency by which nature's wheel is moved in a phenomenal direction is sound, for the original sound or word sets in vibration the matter of which all forms are made and initiates that activity which characterizes even the atom of substance. And I'll just comment on that particular paragraph. When we reincarnate, the soul sounds its own specific note, each of our souls when we reincarnate. And that has encoded in it all the patterns that are needed to build in the karma and the quality of the bodies which the soul will inhabit when it is born in a physical body. Likewise for any living thing, a plant, an animal, and so forth. They all have a note that they will sound that the devas will respond to and will start building according to those blueprints, essentially, which they've been given through sound. The literature and the scriptures of all the ancient nations and great religions bear testimony to the efficacy of sound, or efficacy, as some people say, of sound in producing all that is tangible and visible. The Hindus say very beautifully that the great singer built the worlds and the universe is his soul. This is another way of expressing the same idea. If this is realized and the science of this concept somewhat understood, the significance of our own words and the utterance of sound in speech becomes a momentous happening. LOM, Letters and Occult Meditation, one of the best books, I think, of the Bailey series, says all that exists is based on sound. All differentiation is the result of sound. On each plane, the word has an effect. It has a note or vibration, building or destroying. And in RI, Raise and Initiation, it is said the sound is the sole expression of the ineffable name, the one in whom we live and have our being, the unknown Parabrahman, or beyond the Parabrahman, if you like. Name and form are synonymous, being the secret of manifestation. Naming affirms, and this is how we make affirmations, which is the ABCs of kind of New Age thought. You know, to affirm your wealth, for instance, or your relationships and all that kind of stuff. Plenty of books and literature and videos on that subject. Language is the form within which we express our thoughts and feelings. And it is very varied, of course, because we have hundreds of languages on the planet that all have their nuances and differentiations and range of expression. TCF, A Treatise on Cosmic Fire. That's the biggest book of the Bailey series, about 1,400 pages, and I'm sure the masters themselves are still studying that incredible book. And in that, there's a lot of stuff on sound in that book, actually. I'm just going to give you a little bit from there, where DK says that there are 21 sounds in the solar system, 5 plus 7 plus 9. 5 is the pentagon, or Makara, the 5th principle of mind, and relates to 5 planets. 5 letters are sounded on the right note and are the key to the control of matter, related to the law of economy, or Brahma, the 3rd aspect. And you'll notice that this form here, this geometrical form, is the so-called dodecahedron, which is made up of 12 pentagons, 5-sided forms. Said to be the shape of the universe, or words to that effect, in Blavatsky's Secret Doctrine. Hope my sound is still okay. My fingers are kind of stuck to the microphone here. All right, so
It's
then
fine.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, it's fine, the
Good,
sound.
very good. Then there are 7 letters that relate to the 7 heavenly men. These are the so-called 7 sacred planets within our solar system. Is the Vishnu, or second love wisdom aspect, which relates to the correct or partial sounding, and it results in forms being built. This is the law of attraction. So the first section here relates to the 3rd ray, second section here to the 2nd ray of love wisdom, and the 3rd section here relates to the 1st aspect, or the 1st ray. Composed of 9 letters, spiritual law of synthesis, the dissociation of spirit from form corresponds to 9 initiations. And it relates to Shiva. So you have Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma. It's the 3 aspects of the Godhead. This is very dense material, super esoteric stuff, so I'm just giving you a taste of that without going into any more detail should you wish to chase it up in the book itself. Even just what I've said here, you could meditate on for weeks. By the way, the number 5 is, of course, related to the 5th ray, and Venus is the ruler of 5th ray. Venus, our sister planet, or higher self. And a little bit more from Cosmic Fire. This is brilliant, because it really paints a picture, I think. The great word that peels through 100 years of Brahma, which is about 311 trillion years, or persists in reverberation throughout a solar system, is the sacred sound of AUM, which some people call ancient universal mysteries. In differentiation and as heard in time and space, each of those three mystic letters stands for the first letter of a subsidiary phrase consisting of various sounds. One letter with a sequence of four sounds makes up the vibration or note of Brahma, which is the intelligent aspect dominant in matter. Hence the mystery hidden in the pentagon, in the fifth principle of mind and of the five planes of human evolution. These five letters, when sounded forth on the right note, give the key to the true inwardness of matter and also to its control, this control being based on the right interpretation of the law of economy. So you can see here we have in-depth mantric science here, which is truly at the heart of white magic. These are scientific magical formulas that we're talking about here, of which we are just ever so tiny beginners. Oh, I just want to mention the 49 words relate to 49 subplanes. That's 7 times 7, these 7 planes of perception here. 7 times 7 subplanes in each plane, it's 49. And as I said before, there's a Raja Lord or Deva God who presides over each of these subplanes, is responsible in a sense for its management, if I can use such a probably incorrect phrase. So this is another thing to bear in mind, harkening back to our Deva class, which we had, I think, second term or something like that, where they build all forms. They are responsible, respond to the sound and build all forms. Now, some of you may be old enough to remember this album, The Moody Blues, In Search of a Lost Chord. Great music, actually, quite esoteric, as a few other bands were back in the day. So we have these words within hierarchy that the department heads, such as the Manu and the Christ and the Mahachohan, hold. And these words are passed on to graded initiates in a permutated order, it is said. And so we must differentiate between words and sounds. The word veils thought and purpose. The sound makes possible to manifest in matter. So there is this infinitesimal differentiation. Speech, and this relates to the speech of animals and birds. You probably see many kind of videos of people with birds that are making the most beautiful sounds and songs, which is related to the Deva kingdom, in fact. The birds have a very close relationship to the Devas. Both of them have wings. The so-called lost word of masonry represents the first aspect of spirit and is preserved for us, we're told, in Masonic symbolism. And apparently only a third degree initiate can really begin to search for the lost word of masonry. Some of you may have been in Masonic orders, male or female, a male craft or male and female craft, but the Tibetan does tell us that masonry will reassume its proper position in the age of Aquarius after thousands of years of being really corrupted and distorted. Essentially what occurs in the Masonic Lodge is making sure I've got that position rightly, is essentially a place to invoke and evoke, to work magic, essentially, through ordered ritual and through various people who hold certain positions within the lodge, as it's called. I have practiced it in a couple of groups for several years myself. I haven't done anything for about the last 10 years, but it is a profound um, uh, thing to explore. If you wanted to get more information on that, I'd suggest you read a book called The Spirit of Masonry by Alice Bailey's husband, Foster Bailey, which you can find online. Students would do well to remember that it's the sounding forth of the word. Of course, this is the Om symbol that you can see here in Sanskrit. That it's sounding forth vocally upon the physical plane means little. The important factors are to sound it silently, inaudibly, and within the head. Then, having done so, to hear it reverberate there and to recognize that this self-initiated sound breathed forth from a point of tension is a part of the original sound as it takes form as a word, part of the original sound. When a man perfectly expresses the AUM, he can then sound the OM with effectiveness from progressive points of tension until the third initiation. In a sense, the AUM represents the third material aspect, whereas the OM represents the second loved wisdom aspect. This word here where it says having done so to hear it reverberate reminds me of when I was lying in the sarcophagus in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid by myself several years back and sounding the Om and just feeling it reverberate with great power throughout the entire pyramid, which of course is a sound chamber in many ways. Particularly the King's Chamber is a perfect double cube that is built for sound, as is the surrounding granite lintels that that are built around that chamber. Anyway, I digress. So you can see here the tarot card, the Magician or Warlock, one of the many different versions that you can see in different tarot decks. With lots of symbolism there. Got the sword in his right hand. He's holding something that's burning in his left hand. The sun and moon are behind him, as is the starry firmament. And number one, it's the first tarot card, the first aspect, the first ray, very much the ray of the Magician. In Light of the Soul, LOTS, it is said the occultist works inwards from external in order to discover the sound which created it, penetrates further till he reaches the cause, the idea or divine thought. Then in Razor initiations, true magical work is the understanding of sounds of all beings. The ability to speak the language of the soul is the clue to the work. And this is where those of us who are more sensitive, particularly in the astral body, are able to read people through sensing their frequencies, understanding their sounds, so to speak, their note, their soul note or their personality note or both. In Cosmic Fire, he says, in the power of sound, the law of vibration, and the ability to produce forms in conformity with law is the true magician to be seen. The ability to produce forms in conformity with law. And this reminds me of the sign of Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, the ruler of the third ray of active intelligence, the great manifesting principle, Saturn and Capricorn, that produce form. Sound is spirit, soul is light, the personality is vibration or form. That's a good trinity or trilogy to remember. Sound is spirit, so it's causal. Soul is light, personality, vibration that's been created from the sound. Of course, light is vibration too, can be measured as a frequency. In Treatise on White Magic, he says, psychology means the word of the soul. And we bring about integration of the personality through 1, sound, 2, light, 3, vibration or form. And so the creative work of sound is through thought form making. Creating thought form is related to sound. Very subtle sounds, of course. But when we create a thought form, the divas can see or hear that sound and go ahead with their helping you to create that thought form, that geometrical pattern. So sound is the formula or word of power which the soul communicates and is unconscious often. The dual word, the soul note blended with the personality chords of 2 notes. Of course, the rays that we have in our makeup are all sounds as well. They can be seen as sound or colour. Secondly, light is the first effective sound, pouring forth of light, causing revelation of thought form. So we can think simply of the sun, the greatest source of light in the solar system. There was a sound behind that created that. 3, vibration, the word or thought form that vibrates with the light of its creator. And in response to it, sound or light produces response in matter. Hence, these sounds call together the atoms with which the form can be built. And of course, the devas respond and cooperate. They do so automatically. It's not a conscious choice that they make as such. That is their default, if you like. Form. Through the 5 senses, one becomes aware of the vibratory aspect of all forms in the environment. One doesn't have necessarily an immediate understanding, but filters through over lifetimes. Daniel says, what is the proper tune to sound form? Is there any written guidance? I expect there might be, Daniel. You could Google that question and you might get various responses or interpretations. But simply just the Om, or I've heard people say Aum, Aum, as opposed to the Om, which is or you sound that with an O. So it's Aum or Om. Good question. I can't really answer that though right now. The law of vibration, as I was saying before, the ABCs of New Age thought, of manifesting, basic laws of manifestation of magic, essentially manifestation, magic, same thing. Learn this and manifest faster. This is from some cover of a book or something like that. Rule 10 from Initiation Human and Solar, IHS for short. Occult investigation. 1, the purpose of sound. 2, the esoteric meaning of words and syntax, which are patterns of formation of sentences and words, plus grammar. The laws of vibration and electricity. So you can see here with music, with songwriting, and with the way songwriters weave lyrics and certain words. The words may not make so much sense just in terms of understanding the meaning of them all together, but they certainly have a mantric impact. And that's how we easily remember songs. In fact, we can have songs stuck in our head for weeks and weeks if you're fairly impressionable within your astral body. So This is called the science of mantra Shakti, the understanding the words, syntax, grammar, patterns of formation, and so forth. And it's closely related to the science of mantras. Then you have, of course, the laws of vibration and electricity. And science is making so many headways into these areas now. There are more and more revelations of the science of frequency that you can see almost every week. It's just almost too much to absorb. So we're really going into the Aquarian age with all this stuff. And of course they have sound weapons that they use now. They have these underwater sounds that have created mass whale straining from various sources. Some say it's from fracking, others say it's from the HARP project up there in Alaska. So there are misuses and abuses, of course, of sound. The power of speech and silence, not necessarily audible silence, cannot be initiated where the disciple or applicant for the mystery school cannot be initiated until he has learnt this. In Pythagoras' school, he made prospective students observe 2 years of silence before even being admitted to the school. Of course, we have gurus that have chosen to not speak and just communicate by a alphabet board according to the letters. Very interesting. On the path of return, which we're all hopefully on, speech becomes more brief, words are sparingly used. Speech must be controlled every minute of the day. One who achieves it is rapidly nearing emancipation or harmlessness and freedom. Think about every day the amount of speech that we have. We might make dozens of phone calls, talk to people in the street, in the shops, swear at other drivers when we're driving. And there's this constant flow of that we have to be really vigilant of in terms of controlling, even if it's not verbalized. It's the inner speech that really is where the silence begins. Retention of speech energy when not needed involves realization of cycles and times and seasons. For instance, you may be more verbose on a Gemini moon. No sound is ever made without producing a corresponding effect in Deva substance. That's why they say, you shouldn't say negative things about yourself. I think Bruce Lee is a famous exponent of that, because just as you make positive affirmations about yourself, the negative affirmations can undermine you. Every word sounded is distinguished by A, a specific colour, B, a particular tone, C, a special form, D, a degree of energy or activity, and E, the nature of the ensouling life. This diagram to the right looks at the colours of the musical notes, A sharp, A, G, so forth, F, and basically refers to what I was saying before about sound and light being measurable in terms of frequency. Down here you have a frequency chart, and you can find many of these on the internet. These 432 hertz here that many people are now fond of tuning their instruments to, because it's the supposedly more natural frequency. Anyway, just so briefly there. So sound and speech is regarded by the ancient philosophers as the highest agent used by man in molding himself and his environment. Thought, speech, word, activity, or deed. Thought, word, and deed. We know that triplicity. There's the thought, the word helps to manifest the deed. In White Magic, he says the purpose of all speech is to clothe thought and thus make our thoughts available for others. When we speak, we evoke a thought and make it present, and we bring that which is concealed within us into audible expression. Of course, many writers have this skill of clothing ideas in precise language. The Virgos are very good at it, or Virgo moon or sun. Songwriters like Leonard Cohen, writers like J.K. Rowling all have that ability. Speech reveals, and right speech can create a form of beneficent purpose, just as wrong speech can produce a form which has a malignant objective. We also can, without realizing this, however, ceaselessly and irresponsibly, day after day, we speak, we use words, we multiply sounds, and surround ourselves with form worlds of our own creation. It is not essential, therefore, that before we speak, we should think, engage brain before using tongue, as they say. Thus, remembering the injunction, you must attain to knowledge, and ere you can attain to speech. Having thought, let us then choose the right words to express the right thought, attempting to give correct pronunciation, proper values, and true tonal quality to every word we utter. Now, think about how many people use swear words these days so regularly in speech when it actually is not even needed in many cases. I mean, of course, it does express emotion for some people, but people use bad language, and I'm no prude, of course, and just as culpable as the next person. But and what that creates, how that pollutes the psychic atmosphere. So I think during the Aquarian age, humanity will learn far more the importance, the potency of speech, and the right use of language to create beauty. Because we live in a world of much ugliness, of course, which we've all created over the last thousands or millions of years. Then will our spoken word create a thought form which will embody the idea we have in our mind. Then too will our words carry no discord, but will add their quota to that great harmonizing chord or unifying word, which is the function of mankind, ultimately to utter. Wrong speech separates, and it is interesting to bear in mind that the word, the symbol of unity, is divine, whereas speech in its many diversifications is human. The word, the symbol of unity, is divine, whereas speech in its many diversifications is human. This evolution proceeds and the human family rises into its true position in the great plan of the universe. Right and correct speech will be increasingly cultivated because we shall think more before we utter words, or as a great teacher has said, through meditation we shall rectify the mistakes of wrong speech. And the significance of word form, true and correct sound, and vocal quality will become ever more apparent. And that brings to mind when we hear a great singer and people describe that singer as like hearing an angel sing. There's a connection there with the devas, with the soul itself sounding its notes through the vocal cords, which of course are related to the throat chakra at the back of the neck. All right, sacred words. As we discussed earlier on in last year, or just before we go into that, someone's made a comment. Moment. GH says, looking forward to that day where more people understand that right speech will create beauty. So true, thank you for reminding us. Indeed, reminding myself as much as anyone. um, we know that there's the Manu, the Christ, and the Mahachon, the three major um, offices, if you like, of hierarchy. The Manu's work is related to shifting the Earth's crust through volcanic activity and earthquakes. And this is brought about and through the power of his enunciated sound. He works with special devas. In fact, there's a quote down here. The Mahachohan's work at this time is connected with sound and devas. He says, the Tibetan says here in Cosmic Fire, through the mismanagement of men and their unbalanced development, the sounds of earth, such as those of the great cities, of the manufactories, and of the implements of war, brought about a very serious condition among the gaseous devas. This has to be offset in some way, and the future efforts of civilization will be directed towards the spreading of a revolt against the evils of congested living and to the dissemination of an impulse of a widespread nature to seek the country and wide spaces. One of the main interests in the future will be a tendency towards the elimination of noise owing to the increased sensitiveness of the race. When the energy of water and of the atom is harnessed for the use of man, our present types of factories, our methods of navigation of transportation such as steamers and railway apparatus will be entirely revolutionary. This will have a potent effect not only on man but on the devas. And I was thinking of this today as I was driving in very heavy traffic across the old bridge, the old suspension bridge running across the harbour in Lisbon, Portugal. And just the incredible throng of traffic going both directions. And of course, it's like this all over the world now. Congested living. We have to get out of the cities into the country, into communities in the country, and cultivate quite a lifestyle. Heidi says, such as street parades with their noise certainly create a great damage. Yes and no. There's some celebratory ones that I think are fine. That they also break up old crystallized forms. But there are other ones. I experienced this last night actually. During the summer throughout Europe, Portugal, Spain, and so forth, they have raves that start at 12 o'clock at night. So you can go to sleep at 10 o'clock and then wake up at 3 in the morning with a doof, doof, doof going from 5 kilometers away, and which essentially wakes up whole villages of people who can't sleep. This is one of the that my pet hates, and of course one of a good example of how we create noise in a way that is not thoughtful of other people's needs. So, and of course, a lot of the music around that you hear in these raves is just, to me, soulless electronic music. But maybe I'm just an old guy. But maybe my father said that about rock and roll when I was growing up. JA says, I have also heard the positive and negative of fireworks. Yes. The new fireworks are these amazingly controlled drone displays, which are absolutely extraordinary. A great example of how technology can be used in a clean way. Anyway, so I digress onto a few pet hates there. And of course, you have people who you see a lot in Europe, not so much in other countries, but who tie up dogs to protect their properties and let them go mad and bark all day. That's another just another layer of sound that adds to the general uh, uh, rush of sound that we're immersed in. So, and with regard to elimination of noise, well, they have these magnetic railways in Japan now that go super silent. And I think this was, in fact, one of the predictions that the Tibetan made in one of the books about using magnetism for silent transport or something like that. I can't remember the quote. One of you may not. But the elimination of noise is, I think, a number one world priority. There's just too much of it about, and it basically blocks the soul of humanity from getting through. If you think about that, we create so much noise and activity in our environment, and we don't have that quiet space to reflect in. In fact, many people can't stand silence. They have to put some music on or um, the television or some other distraction. Um, because in the silence, not only does the soul speak, but also stuff comes up that you may have been avoiding looking at. A few pictures from Jeffrey Hodgson's books on the devas. These are great. On the one on the right is a great mountain deva. The one on the left is, I think, it looks like a butterfly, a higher nature deva of some sort. I can't read who this is. Oh, Agnieszka says, restoring healing through music like organ music in churches. Yes, indeed. And some of the churches have amazing acoustics and reverberate. There's this word reverberation again. As the sound reverberates within that sound container and playing certain notes and so forth. In fact, the Tibetan, I think we discussed in the esoteric healing class, that a certain note will be played for people who are on the transition into death, and to help them snap the life thread between the physical body and the etheric. And more knowledge will be given out about that in the Aquarian Age work cult. Again, we have the 7 planes of perception, the spiritual triad up here, remember, I talked about in the meditation, Atma, Buddhi, Manas, or spiritual will, Buddhi, or intuition, and mind. Going from the spiritual, the Atmic plane, to the Buddhic plane, to the mental plane, which of course is that higher subplane of the mental plane is the seat of the soul. Always good to remember this two-dimensional diagram, because it expresses a 4-dimensional reality. The key for the aspirant to discover: A, his own sound, his brother's sound, his group's sound, the sound of the heavenly man, the planetary logos, with whom they are connected, the sound of the logos, the solar logos of nature, the solar system. So there are many, many sounds, millions, literally, of sounds to identify, to know, as we move through our various stages of spiritual unfoldment. On the physical plane, one finds one's own note through physical hearing. On the astral plane, one finds one's brother's note through identity of emotion and comes to the recognition of a brother's identity. And this is related to clairaudience. This also relates to a passage that the Tibetan discusses about one's emotional family. It's a very interesting passage. We all have an emotional family. We might not necessarily be part of our spiritual family necessarily, but an emotional family. and not necessarily part of the family that we're born into. On a mental, we find the group note, the differentiating sound. On the Buddhic plane, we find the planetary logos' note. This is related to telepathy. This is where you get up into the realm of the music of the spheres. The spheres are in fact the planetary logi, 7 sacred planets, and the 5 non-sacred planets. On the atmic, the note logoic, solar logos perhaps, begins to sound. This is related to what they call the beta tube, or beta tubes. Are you clairaudient? Indeed. Hearing, or astral clairaudience, we hear with the whole astral body. And as I said before, many people who are astrally sensitive have this capacity. Hearing is a mental extension of the faculty of differentiating sound, and it's still to do with the form. Hearing at the Buddhic level involves knowledge of individual and group sounds and their complete unification. So we're getting into some very, very advanced magic here that is just giving us a glimpse, a glimmer of what can be. Sound is the basis of existence, the method of being, the final unifier, the raison d'etre, the method of evolution, and therefore a beta tube. As I said before, in the opinion of the old philosophers, sound or speech is next to thought, the highest karmic agent used by man. Isn't that an interesting statement? Of the various karmic agencies wielded by man in the way of molding himself and surroundings, sound or speech is the most important, for to speak is to work in ether, which of course rules the lower quaternary of elements, air, fire, water, and earth. Human sound or language contains therefore all the elements required to move the different classes of devas, and those elements are of course the vowels and the consonants. So what he means by to move the different classes is to be catalysts for the different classes of devas. Now, vowels and consonants are very interesting because we have 5 vowels in the English language and we have all the rest of consonants, 21 consonants, but some of which sound like vowels. And from one point of view, the vowels are more related to the soul expression and the consonants more to the personality. So it's interesting, I think, that Portuguese language has more vowels in it than any other language I've heard or know of. And I feel maybe the basis for the new universal language of the future, which won't be Portuguese per se, but it will be a language that will have more vowel sounds in it than current languages do. In Light of the Soul, he says sublimation of the sense of hearing and its utilization to hear the voice of the science or the music of the spheres is a profound department of occult teaching. Of course, the sublimation of any of the senses or to have a problem with being blind or deaf does stimulate the inner senses and develops and refines them more, as we know from many blind musicians, for instance. There's that phrase, the music of the spheres. The goal of evolution for devas is inner hearing, therefore mantric sounds and balanced modulation are methods of contacting them. That word modulation, that's what you see in the sound wave in when you're looking at it on a screen. I think, not sure what book, it might be Externalization of the Hierarchy, he says great angels returning with the Christ have much to communicate on color and sound and their effects on the etheric bodies of humanity animals and flowers, the healing of disease, especially using the color violet. They will train humanity in the knowledge of superhuman physics. Weight will be transmuted via sound mantrams, noiseless machines, and motion. Of course, this is in fact a faculty which humanity had but lost in the past. And the building of great megaliths and pyramids and so forth were done, in fact, by sound, rendering the atoms within the stone weightless so they could be lifted effortlessly and put into place. So we will regain that. And in fact, I think that's coming very soon, the re-emergence of that lost science. How are we going for time? We'll keep going. Another 5 minutes. Number. The science of numbers most of you are familiar with, Pythagorean numerology, like in this chart here. We do the science of our birth date, our name and so forth. The science of numbers is in reality the science of colour and sound. Numbers are the measured units of sound and colour. Sounds and colours are spiritual numerals. So the science of spiritual numerals is different from numerology per se. It's the more esoteric version of numerology, you could say. The Tibetan says 3 major developments will revolutionize modern life. Realizing energy of the atom, B, light and color, C, sound. A second discovery will grow out of the present investigations as to light and color. The effect of color on people, animals and units in the vegetable kingdom will be studied, and the result of those studies will be the development of etheric vision, or the power to see the next grade of matter with a strictly physical eye. Increasingly will people think and talk in terms of light, and the effect of the coming developments in this department of human thought will be triple. Indeed, in the last few years, people are using these phrases, awakening to the light, far more than I've ever heard in my life. Of course, with the approaching hierarchy in 2025, that light intensity is increasing, as it has done in this recent Leo full moon period, by the way, with the energy of Sirius, brightest star in the night sky. There's a good example of the intensity of light that's coming through. People will possess etheric vision. The vital or etheric body lying as the inner structure of the outer forms will be seen and noted and studied in all kingdoms of nature. This will break down all barriers of race and all distinctions of color. The essential brotherhood of man will be established. Hallelujah. We shall see each other and all forms of divine manifestation as light units of varying degrees of brightness, and shall talk and think increasingly in terms of electricity, of voltage, of intensity, of power. The age and status of men in regard to the ladder of evolution will be noted and become objectively apparent. The relative capacities of old souls and young souls will be recognized, thereby re-establishing on earth the rule of the enlightened. This is an extraordinary statement here, and essentially what he's saying is that humanity soon in the future will be able to perceive as the masters perceive today. The masters can look at an astronaut or disciple and see a certain vibration of light, its intensity, its color, and so forth, and know at a glance where that astronaut or disciple is within the ashram and what his problem is, what his next step to take might be. Have a comment up here. Agnieszka says, like saying, show your real colors. Yes, indeed. Show your true colors. The color of your soul. So in the future, just to finish up, I'm not going to go any further than this page. I'll I'll open it up after this to some comments or questions. In light, letters on occult meditation, LOM or LOOM, they forecast, firstly, medical school phraseology based on vibration in terms of colour and sound will be common in the not too distant future. 2, religious teaching will teach about virtue through colour. People will be grouped under ray colour. So again, coming back to the ray classes, your favourite colour. What is your favourite colour? Tell you about a particular ray. 3, the science of numbers, science of colour and sound. Colours will eventually supersede figures. 4, gravity, weights, building construction, creation of vacuum through sounds, as the Lemurians and the Atlanteans knew. 5, destruction through manipulation of certain colours and uniting sound. How interesting. Manipulation of certain colours and uniting sound. Both can destroy and heal. And of course, the walls of the proverbial walls of, I can't think of the name right now. You know the one where they walked around, they marched around for 7 days and destroyed the walls of that city. I was going to say Babylon, but it's another word. So sound is destructive and creative. 6, music and construction. In construction, music. Jericho, thank you, Rachel. The walls of Jericho. Very occult story based in the early sub-races of this fifth root race. An Atlantean story, really, where they use trumpets and stamping on the ground, marching, and voices too, I think. That was a complete work of magic.